Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, it feels like we are speed running the entire Indiana football season this week. This is the fifth game? Well, I watched the Illinois game earlier, so this is I think the fifth Indiana game I've watched in its entirety, and it feels like generally when we get to this point with like a deep dive on one of these upcoming teams, it's just kind of like you get to game 4, game 5, and you're just kind of confirming your priors, and I just kind of feel like I'm just kind of going, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. And this one was fun because the first thing they showed on the broadcast was making his first career start for Wisconsin at quarterback. And I went, oh boy, here we go. And yeah, pretty much that.
Although that quarterback that you mentioned, Carter Smith, this was probably, perhaps, maybe the first college football game ever with 2 Carter Smiths. So you say that's not exciting. I say that's maybe the most exciting thing that happened in this game. So we are here to recap and discuss what we learned from watching Indiana's 31-7 win over Wisconsin, which was a 10-7 game at the half. To give you an idea of how things went, very difficult going for the Indiana run game in this one, which Wisconsin is one of the better run defenses nationally. So that's something interesting because Ohio State also one of the better run defenses going nationally. And in this game, Roman Hemby and Kalen Black, their top 2 running backs, combined for 70 yards on 20 carries. Black was held to 12 yards on 6 carries, and Roman Hemby was 58 yards on 14 carries. And to me, Tom, let's go ahead and start with the Indiana running game because this is, again, more confirmation of what we've seen where the long run of the day was 8 yards by Hemby. You saw more from redshirt freshman Kobe Martin in this game, but he generally does not play in the tougher games, so I don't know if we should expect him. I think he's more explosive than the other 2 guys at times, but nothing that I saw from the running game today in this game, again, makes me think that Ohio State is in trouble. They're certainly good and respectable, but it's not like you're looking at this going, how are you going to stop all of these guys? Because I think they're limited in what they can do.
Yeah, and I think this is, I mean, you probably remember the Wisconsin game, dear viewer and listener, that Wisconsin's run defense is really good and Wisconsin's pass defense is kind of booty cheeks. And that was exactly what this game was. Wisconsin held Indiana to 2.2 yards per rush. And then Fernando Mendoza went 22 for 24 for 299 yards and 4 touchdowns. And really the only thing that worked at all for Wisconsin in terms of pass defense was they got to him and sacked him 5 times. And that's a little bit of a concern to me. And, we'll get to the offensive line in a minute, but yeah, the running game was really pretty uninspiring here, but it was kind of a game where it felt like they weren't particularly worried about trying to run it. It was just kind of like, well, we probably won't be able to run it, but we'll be able to throw it just fine. So we're just going to throw it when we need to throw it. And it was just kind of, which guy would you like to have beat you this time? Like they could get cute with it where they had a backup tight end whose name we have not said on any of these shows yet. Nowakowski. 4 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown. Why were they getting cute with it? Well, he was a Wisconsin transfer. So like, all right, well, we're going to get you a 37-yarder. We're going to get you a touchdown. Like, sure, absolutely. Why not? Like they could just kind of do whatever they wanted to, mostly with Wisconsin when they wanted to do it. It was very similar to the Ohio State game against Wisconsin where they didn't run the ball incredibly well. Ohio State ran it a lot better than Indiana did, I would say. But this was one where even, it's 10-7 at halftime and you're not thinking, oh boy, they are really in trouble. It was like everything Wisconsin did that was positive was kind of like, well, they came up with a really clever play design and now you've burned that one. So that one won't work again. The touchdown was play action to a tight end on 4th and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a spectacular, cataclysmic bust in the secondary, but it's like, well, they're not going to fall for that again. So, it never felt like Indiana was in any meaningful danger, but it was not an overwhelming performance by Indiana by any means.
No, and you mentioned Fernando Mendoza, 22 of 24 for 299 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 sacks. One of those 2 incompletions went off the hands of his receiver, to give you an idea of how accurate he was on the day. They were without Elijah Surratt. So again, enter Charlie Becker, who went for 108 yards on 5 catches. He was the guy who went for over 100 yards against Penn State after really not doing anything prior to that. And it's just, to me, Becker, Surratt, and Omar Cooper have all stepped up at different times and been a 100-yard guy or a game winner. So I do think this is I'll say second best wide receiver group in the Big Ten. And I think I'll stand by that. I think when you're going to take Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, but Indiana's not a far drop from that. I do think they're better than, say, Oregon. And so this is going to be a legit matchup for Ohio State, especially with Fernando Mendoza. But the Wisconsin pass rush, and Darrell Peterson was a big part of that defensive end, edge rusher. They were getting to him, and they were ruining the RPOs in different ways, and the RPO is a big part of this offense. So interesting to see that Wisconsin can be so effective and sack him 5 times and disrupt him and take some plays away. Lot to like there if you're Ohio State in terms of, okay, I can see some avenues here. And I guess if you wanted to go ahead and just take it from here and talk about some of the guys that keep popping up on the offensive line when you're looking at, well, where are these issues at? There are a couple of places.
Well, I have to disagree with you here. I would never end a sentence with a preposition like that. However, I would say that, it's the same issues. It's Bray Lynch, 74, the right guard. It's Khalil Benson, number 67, the right tackle. It's just like Benson had on the first drive, it was like history's most obvious hold in the world that goes uncalled, like right in front of the officials, right by where the ball is. Like, I have no idea how they missed that one. Give up a sack on what I guess was Jake Butt thought it was like just a miscommunication, like he passed off a guy, but it was just kind of like, all right, you got it. Oh, there's no one there. Well, all right. And now down goes Fernando Mendoza. There was a 3rd and short where they got stuffed. Mm-hmm. And that was on Bray Wyatt, the right guard. It's not great. It was Bray Lynch. Sorry, Bray Wyatt is absolutely not an Indiana football player. I'm like, that's not right. They had Kellen Wyatt, who's on defense, and they have Bray Lynch, who's on offense. Bray Wyatt is not a football player. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, it's just the same stuff. It's, this is like a confirming your priors thing. And I have a friend of mine from years back who went to Indiana, and for years, like, he would say, I'm the only person who would text him about IU football, because like during the Bill Lynch era, I'm like, man, you guys almost had it. And it was, I'd be like, none of his Indiana people would ever text him. So I was always texting about Indiana football. I just texted him and said, like, if I was to tell you there's 1 or 2 offensive linemen that I'm kind of looking at and going like, yeah. So I'll be interested to see what he says. I just shot him a text while I was rewatching this game. But yeah, I think that might be a concern for Indiana. And the problem they have is, if you can't run the ball, that kind of takes away the RPO. And the RPO is such an important part of their offense. And then I start to worry. And the stat that they put on the screen, holy Moses, Tony, Fernando Mendoza, this was entering the game. Fernando Mendoza at home, which is basically against all the bad teams, 77% completion, 21 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. And those numbers probably went up slightly. He's probably about, after this Wisconsin game, about 80% completions and 25 touchdowns and 1 interception. On the road, 63%, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And that's Oregon and Penn State and Iowa. And I look at those numbers and I go, which side of that ledger does Ohio State fall more closely on? And I think it's not the one where it's 25 touchdowns and 1 pick.
Yeah, I'm looking at his season stats now with his splits. 7 home games, 5 road games. In those 7 home games, he's thrown for 1,774 yards. And the 5 road games, he's thrown for 984 yards. Not quite half, or a little bit more than half despite the a similar number of games. And home games, he's completing 79.2% of his passes. Road, neutral site, 61.7. So you've got a 17.5-point drop from home to road. His yards per attempt dropped from 10.3 to 8.2. As you said, 25 touchdowns, 1 interception at home, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in 5 road games.
And the last one, the reason those numbers are different is because they just played Purdue, which is not amazing at football this year. So,
yeah, so a little stat padding there for Mendoza. But yeah, I do think the offensive line, the right side, the left side seems pretty good so far, and you can include Coogan in there as the center. Defensively, we saw another big game from defensive end Stephen Daly, who at this point, this was one of he's in a streak right now of like 3 to 4 tackles for loss per game, and he's leading the Big Ten. I assume he's leading. I haven't checked the leaderboard, but he's got like 18.5 tackles for loss. Most of them coming in the last month since he stepped in for Kellen Wyatt, and as he got injured in the middle of the season. He's done very well, did well in this one again against Wisconsin. I don't know how much you take from a Wisconsin offense and trying to apply it to an Ohio State offense when you're watching Wisconsin on 3rd and 8 run read option with the quarterback and him keeping it, and you're seeing Elijah Hardy miss a tackle on that. You're seeing, it's just like watching some of the linebackers try to, run around and try to handle this just read option stuff that they're not necessarily going to see on Saturday. But what are some of your takeaways from the defense against an offense that is nothing like Ohio State's?
Yeah, this is one where a lot like the Iowa game, I kind of went, well, I'm mostly looking at Indiana's offense against a pretty good defense because what Wisconsin is doing with a true freshman quarterback making his first start, and Vinny Anthony's pretty okay as a wide receiver, and everyone else is kind of like, I don't think there's a ton to take away. I did think it was, sort of worth noting that Wisconsin had a really good first drive and wasted it with a missed field goal, and then on the second drive, Vinny Anthony, they threw a screen to him and it looked like it might be set up to go for a long way, and he just didn't catch it. So, there were certainly some missed opportunities there, but it was really like almost all of my notes are on the offense for Indiana. It just, it feels like I look at this team and I go, the Indiana defense, good defensive front, great linebackers, really no complaints with either of those two levels. And the secondary didn't really get tested. Like, this is the only thing I'm really interested in watching. Like, I feel like I know what we've got with the Indiana, defensive front, the Indiana linebackers at this point. I really would love to see them play another good passing offense, which, great news, that's going to happen on Saturday. And we'll find out, we will find out if our priors are confirmed or not on a couple of the spots in the Indiana secondary. But honestly, I just kind of looked at this game and went, can we go back to talking about their wide receivers? Because I would like to talk more about Charlie Becker and Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt's the name that you hear, and Elijah Surratt hasn't really jumped off the screen in any of these games in the way that Charlie Becker has in the last couple against Penn State and against Wisconsin. And Omar Cooper had a big game or two, but they've had 4 different wide receivers with multiple 100-yard games this year. That's depth that is going to be, this is the first team I think all season that is really legitimately going to challenge Ohio State's secondary. All right, let's see what you got, because you feel like what Ohio State's got in the secondary, but if it's Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper and EJ Williams was right. EJ Williams, is that EJ Williams was he was the one who kind of limped off, and I think he missed the Purdue game. So but if it's Becker and it's Elijah Surratt and it's Omar Cooper, those are 3 really good wide receivers and 3 wide receivers that can attack you in different ways, where Cooper's kind of more like the slot guy and more like the Brandon Inniss, and a lot of sort of volume catches close to the line of scrimmage and can maybe make you miss and turn that into something bigger. Surratt is kind of their back shoulder guy, and Becker is the deep threat. He's the one where you see them just try and take the top off the defense a couple times a game to him. That is as complete a wide receiver unit as we've seen Ohio State play all season. So that to me is, assuming Mendoza has time, that's going to be maybe one of the most interesting matchups, I think, anywhere on the field on Saturday.
And it's not just two guys, like you said. They can rotate them in, and they'll find ways to get guys the ball. They'll find matchups, and they've got a quarterback that can throw it to them accurately, and he's good downfield. He's good with the deep ball. So it's going to be the best test for the Ohio State secondary that we've seen this year by far. And you can throw in Texas in there. It's like, no, I think it's much better than Texas, especially this late into the season. So a huge test for everybody. And I think I can't wait to watch it because it's going to be both sides of the ball. It's going to be tests outside and seeing who can stand up and who can hold up and who can, get away with the most penalties, because there will be a lot of grabbing in this game and fighting and pushing off. There will be some OPIs that do not get called. Don't be shocked when there are OPIs that do get called. You got some physical guys, and then, just don't get caught deep. Get your safeties back and be careful with every single wide receiver that steps on the field in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful, because any of them can go, and that could be the difference in the game. Because at some point, a home run, it's not free points, but it's like free points, because you expect this to be a difficult path to the end zone. So if you can hit one, that's a little bit of insurance right there, or even more, better than that. So I do expect to see some downfield shots taken in this game. No reason not to. Like, swing for the fences. I'm not saying all game long, but at least every inning.
Well, these are two teams that we've seen kind of struggle to run the ball in short yardage at times. Like, it feels like that's, Ohio State, you saw Ohio State trying to punch it in against Michigan, and this is a better defensive line than Michigan has. And Ohio State was not able to just sort of man ball it in from the 1 yard line or the 2 yard line. And we've seen Indiana struggle in 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 kind of situations a bunch in these games. So it may be how do you avoid having red zone struggles? Well, you just throw it over the red zone and directly into the end zone. That's certainly one way to attack that. So yeah, and frankly, I think this is not going to be a super duper high scoring game. Yeah, this is not a game that's going to be played in the 40s. This is a game that might be played in the 20s or perhaps low 30s. I don't think this is, I think this is a game where you hit a big touchdown or two. That could be the game. Like that could be the difference. Finding Charlie Becker deep or finding Carnell Tate deep, whichever it is, whichever of these teams can do that, I think is going to be the one that wins it. And, you can look at the wide receivers and then you kind of look at the safeties, and it's like, I think Ohio State has better wide receivers, but it's a lot closer than you would think with basically any other. You actually have to kind of think about it a little bit in this game. And I think Ohio State probably has better safeties. And so Ohio State probably has better corners. Again, these are all relatively close, but I think you're kind of going around the field, and maybe we do a tail of the tape show at some point. But I kind of look at that and it's kind of like, yeah, I like Ohio State guys a little better. It feels like it's not, this is not a game where Ohio State's going to beat them by 35 points, I don't think. But it's a game where it feels like Ohio State has a bunch of kind of small advantages that could, that Ohio State's right side of the offensive line issues feel like they've maybe resolved themselves a little better than Indiana's have. Like you look at the early season games and you're thinking the same thing about the right side of the offensive line. And then Ohio State seems like maybe they've sort of shored that up a little bit. And I don't know that I feel the same way about Indiana.
In terms of, I get just a few last points for me. Back defensively, and this is something that we've seen before in previous games where the opponent is just not good enough to take advantage of a break. And you mentioned Vinny Anthony dropping a tunnel screen that would have gone maybe the distance. Just flat drops it, not unlike Jeremiah Smith's first ever target last year as a true freshman. And those are things that you wouldn't expect Ohio State to do. And we talked about this in the either the Iowa or the Oregon game where probably the Iowa game, just not good enough to take advantage of the holes that are presented. And I think Ohio State should be. You wouldn't expect a drop on something like that. And I still think Aiden Fisher at times has trouble getting out, running the entire length to the sideline and making the play. He's great between the hashes, I think, but there are times where he can't get all the way out there, and you could turn the corner on him. And then also after 2 games of watching Isaiah Jones, linebacker Isaiah Jones, wreck things, didn't really see much from him in this one, and they were playing some nickel as well. Strangely, you're playing nickel against Wisconsin. Who would expect that? But I was like, oh, I was hoping to see more from Isaiah Jones. And, he had a few tackles, but nothing that really stood out. But again, I agree with you. Not great short yardage situations for the offense, for the Indiana offense. And I think that's basically what I've got in this one.
The only other thing that I think we just need to mention, and this is very much confirming our priors, Niko Radicic, the place kicker, made his only field goal. He has not missed a field goal all season long. So, that and him kicking indoors on an obviously dry field in Indianapolis with no wind, you would sort of assume he's whenever they line up for something, unless Ohio State blocks it, you have to sort of just put the 3 points on the board. I think McCarthy, the punter, 4 punts for an average of 34.3. Was it because they were punting from like super duper plus territory? Sure wasn't. No touchbacks, no 20, nothing inside the 20, just not great. And that's, in a game like this where it's just, this is potentially going to be a sort of fine margin game. And, if Ohio State's slightly better in a bunch of different spots and Indiana, it can't steal points with, who was the punter for Alabama in the Sugar Bowl? Scott?
J.K. Scott.
J.K. Scott. Like, you can't have the J.K. Scott, like, just here's 15 yards of field position on every exchange of punts kind of game. That's, that would be very helpful for Indiana. And their punter has just not been great this season. And this was a perfectly fine day. This was the same day as the OSU UCLA game. So I think they said the weather was in the high 60s or something and sunny and not super, it was windy, but it wasn't that windy. And so, yeah, it was just, it feels like there's just a bunch of little stuff. And I'm sure Indiana people are like, you're saying everyone stinks. It's like, no, we're stipulating you are one of the top 2 teams in the country. Absolutely. We are looking at you and going, okay, like, assume that everyone is good. Where are the possible concerns? Like, that's kind of what we're looking at this point. And that's why the conversation is the way it is.
And with those short punts, I wouldn't expect too much from Ohio State's punt return game with Brandon Inniss because coverage is going to be right there because they don't have far to run. That's one of the reasons why Ohio State is so good at it as well. So that will do it. If you want to hit the thumbs up, if you're watching on YouTube, we would appreciate that. Hit the bell to be notified. Subscribe to the channel. As you know, we got a game to cover. It's going to be a bunch of videos as we break it all down here at the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. It's on with Buckeyes tomorrow morning, talking with Ross Fulton, talking with coaches and players and getting all of those clips put up and getting you to better understand exactly what you're going to see on Saturday night. And, of course, we are talking about this at the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Say hello to us over there. Sign up. Would love to talk to you. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.